I guess we'll start at the beginning, Mr. Bellman. As I understand it, you were working in a family bakery and you enjoyed drawing, and did you see an ad, or how did it come to be?
Well, first let me introduce myself. My name is Alan Bellman and I'm an alcoholic. Oh, wrong me. You know, they say, always ask me, how did it happen? I says, well, you always start from the beginning. I was a little kid, maybe 6 or 7 years old. I loved to draw. It was something that's within you. Whatever was open. My father had a bakery. I introduced the first commercial bag. I was drawing on the paper bags. Boy, would I like to have one of those paper bags back now. And I love to draw. I always wanted to tell a story in pictures. To me, it was inborn. Tell a story in pictures. Well, I was 18 and I saw an ad in the New York Times. They wanted a background artist for Captain America. I said to my dad, it was Columbus Day, 1942. I said, Dad, I'll go tomorrow, it's a holiday. Why I said that? Was I afraid of rejection, of competition? I don't know. I was all of 18. He said, you go today. We went back and forth, and I went today. I get there to the McGraw-Hill building in New York City. I go up to the, forgot the floor, but went in, said Timely Comics. I opened the door, went to the young lady behind the window, and I said, I'm here for the job. She said, just sit down. A gentleman came in by the name of Don Rico, who did the Young Allies. You remember him?
Absolutely, I know Don Rico.
Yeah, he had a brother called Chester Rico, who was a prize fighter. I never seen him win. Not really. I mean, I'm going to jump around with you guys. We used to take off to see Chester Rico fight. Don Rico, me, Frank Giacoya, Vince Salacia. A few names I'm throwing at that you might not know, but these were the guys that worked with me in the golden age of Timely. Wait, Chester Rico comes out, he takes my word, he comes back in about 10 minutes or less. He says, you start Monday. And wow, you know, went home and I started Monday. So comes Monday, I walk in, and Chester Rico, he's gone. I mean, Don Rico, his brother, starts to introduce me, and right away I feel there's an atmosphere that you could cut with a knife. There was tension in that room. It was the illustrator's room. First, Don introduced me to Sid Shores. Sid Shores was the second one who took over Captain America after Simon and Kirby left. That's how I got the job, by the way, when Simon and Kirby left.
So they departed prior to your arrival there, is that correct?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And then he introduced me to Vince Salacia, who was the inker. Now, Vince Salacia was a very nervous guy. And that's the way he inked. But his inking, he was good. You know, his hand would shake. He did a good job. Anyway, so that's one side of the room, 2 guys. The other side was Don Rico's crew. And he introduced me to Frank Giacoya, Chris Rule, Frank Karen, a bunch of other guys, I can't think of it.
Was it would you call it more of a studio system?
It was a bullpen, called a bullpen. I appreciate if you have any questions to ask me to make it easier. I mean, I can go on for 10 hours and tell you.
It's all about you.
That's what my wife said. It's all about you, isn't it? And I said, no, it's you too. Anyway, to be more in a more serious vein. Well, here I was doing what I wanted to do, but I hated backgrounds, because backgrounds was tedious. You had to take a ruler. But in 2 weeks, they gave me my own script, and I'm trying to think of the name. Oh, The Patriot. The Patriot was the first job I did, yeah. I penciled in it, yeah.
Captain America, kind of, you know, inspirational character in that regard. He didn't wear a mask, but he had like a
He had a clumpy head. What did I know? You know, I tried to dress him up. I was all of 18. You know, you think.
So when you got your first script, did you follow it? Was it a detailed script, or do you recall, or did you do whatever you wanted to do, or follow it verbatim, or what was
Well,
the
I'll tell
expression
you,
like?
I try to imitate Chester Gould drew Dick Tracy. Why? Because his characters were so odd, you know. But to speak about Dick Tracy, I'm going to just go back and forth with you.
Fine.
Chester Gould did not know how to draw. Just didn't know how to draw. But he had a style. And he knew how to color. And so, you see, it's not always the ability in drawing, it's the ability of a style and idea. Sometimes, look, let's look at Superman if we can. They were 16-year-olds when they came to New York. That was Joe Shuster and Siegel, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. I was a kid myself, I was younger than them. I loved his work, Joe Shuster, who drew it. He had different characters, and it just kept my interest, the way his style was. 16, 15, he was a kid, and I was actually inspired by his work. In fact, a few years ago, they asked me to do a drawing to save the house of Jerry Siegel, the one who wrote Superman. So to say, I contributed a drawing to save the home of Jerry Siegel in Cleveland, Ohio. Well, win one, lose two. So the fact remained that I got a letter from Mrs. Siegel, who's now deceased, and a daughter from Jerry Siegel, thanking me for the contribution. And those are wonderful things that I will hold on for dear life, is those letters. Anyway, working in the office, I did not see Stan Lee at all. In fact, I never knew who my boss was. Nobody said, I'm your boss. Nobody.
You never met Martin Goodman when you were there?
I didn't even know who anybody was, but who was in my room. We had the illustrators room, and we had the animators room, which included Jaffe, Al Jaffe, who went on to fame in Mad Magazine. Oh, he loved to give everybody a hot foot. You guys know what hot foots are, you young guy? Yeah, shit, they don't know nothing.
It's when you put a match in somebody's shoe and you light the match. And they get a hot foot.
Yeah, no, but he used to creep on his fours. He was a pudgy guy. Today I saw him a few years ago. He does not look anything like he looked when I worked with him. He used to creep on his fours, walk under a guy's drawing table, take the match, like Coach said, put a match inside his soul and light it. He got his jollies. I thought he liked girls, but that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I can tell you what the relationship was to Stanley and Martin Goodman. There was Robbie Solomon. He was a former hat salesman and a brother-in-law to Martin Goodman. Robbie Solomon was Stanley's uncle. And Robbie Solomon walked around, nobody knew what he did. They said he was a spy for Goodman. But
I read that. Mm-hmm.
But we didn't know. I mean, he picked on everybody, Robbie Solomon. He almost made me cry. And he'd go around, draw like Macro Boy, draw like a couple of names that worked for other companies. Goodman was outselling every other company. And this guy was a former hat salesman. And I met Joe Simon in 2007. And I said to Joe Simon, I says, Joe, Robbie Solomon, as soon as I mentioned his name, Robbie Solomon, he says, that son of a bitch. He used to hound me, draw like this guy. Joe Simon, the greatest guy that ever created anything. Better than Superman, better than Batman, Captain America, is on top. And this guy was a ladies' hat salesman. he didn't know nothing about art. But he was protected by Martin Goodman because they were brother-in-laws. You know, you ever see it? Hey, can you get my husband a job? I mean, in all due respect, I am just mocking the situation. But Robbie Solomon just hounded the artist. Draw like this guy, draw like that. That's like telling a left-handed kid to draw with his right hand, to write with his right hand, which my wife has trouble. She's left-handed. She hits with her right hand. But Robbie Solomon, when I saw Joe Simon for the first and only time, he even picked on Joe Simon. In the meantime, what can I say? Even though Robbie Solomon was hard on everybody, I always believe that our life is sort of formed for us because, well, let me put it this way. I knew I was increasing, I was getting better and better in my art. I went up to the Associated Press and with my samples. By the way, I was a copy boy for Associated Press as a kid. You know what a copy boy is? No, they don't know what a copy boy is.
It's a gopher, right?
No, more than a gopher. A copy boy, I worked at Associated Press. They had these ticker tape machines that would type out the news, okay? So you'd rip it off, you get about 8 or 7 copies, you give it to this editor, this editor, this editor. This is the way the news, and then you write it up on a typewriter. Okay, so it was a great job. I worked from 12 midnight to I think 9 in the morning, you know. So, well, anyway, as far as I was concerned, I worked for Stan Lee. Oh yeah, how did I know Stan Lee was my boss? I see Robbie Solomon walking down with a little kid. And I says to somebody, who's that? Oh, that's Stan Lee, that's Robbie, Uncle Robbie's nephew. And that's the first time I saw Stan Lee. When he was being broken in as editor. He worked there before as an office boy, mind you. But Stan Lee, that was my first introduction to Stan Lee, was that time from the back. He walked behind Robbie Solomon like a little puppy dog. But Robbie Solomon died at a very young age, and Stan Lee never walked behind anybody else. And we all know what Stan Lee did.
Now, when you said you worked in the studios for a while, how long was that period? Did you eventually transition to a work-from-home scenario, or did you always work in the Timely Studios until it became Atlas
well,
in the 50s?
There was a time that came that they found a lot of inventory up to the neck, and every day they release one person or 2 people. We had what we call a bitch box right over the animator's room and the illustrator's room. Every day you hear a name, hey, Joe, somebody come in, and we knew it was Judgment Day. And to myself, I said, I seen him come and seen him go. One day, Alan Bellman, I said to myself, I'm going. But what I did, I ran down to Lev Gleason Publications with my samples. I dug up some magazines with my work, Bob Wood and what's the other one? Charlie Byro was editors. And there's a story about Bob Wood that I'm going to tell you. You all know of the magazine Crime Does Not Pay. Well, Bob Wood and Charlie Byro were editors. Well, working for Bob Wood, he was a wonderful guy during the week, but he come in on Mondays with shiners, bruises on his face. I was told he drank a lot and got into fights. But during the week, he was sober, everything went well. Christmas, we went to his penthouse apartment. He had a beautiful life. Years later, I did work for Lev Gleason for quite a time. Then they gave up their staff. And I'm walking in New York City and I see a headline. Cartoonist kills woman in tryst. Bob Wood killed this woman and had this babe in a room for days and days and drinking, and he killed her. What makes a person do this, I don't know. But I was horrified. I knew this man. He was gentle, he was soft, he was kind. And they sent him to prison for several years. He got out of prison, to make a long story short. He was a short order cook in a diner in New Jersey. He was in with the mob, maybe he owned money or something, and the mob killed him and murdered him. So that's a sad, sad story. It's
one of the darker tales of comic book history, but what Mr. Bellman said is accurate and true if you do your research. And an interesting note, which I've always found a unique parallel, is Lev Gleason and Charlie Biro primarily produced crime comics. That was their big forte, which were, again, salacious at that time. All of that led eventually down the road to what we know to be the former Comics Code. They did do a superhero character called Crime Buster. It was a young kid who like beat up guys, but then that eventually, and a character called Daredevil.
Yeah, Daredevil started there, yeah.
That fought Hitler and the Yellow Claw. So, but they eventually moved into crime material. And some of these covers, even back then, I mean, you had drug overdose and women getting beaten.
I worked on a cover for Bob Wood, yeah. Mm-hmm. He started on it. He could you finish it? I took it home. Mm-hmm. Worked on. And you know, it's a great life. I didn't realize that even getting to 92 is a chore, you know. I mean, it wasn't easy. I was married twice. Unfortunately, my second wife is not here because she's guarding the store. But God was good to me, and I really believe, because here I am at 92. What tomorrow is, I don't know. But I know one thing, that I feel I can't use the word lucky. I don't like the word lucky. I really believe in someone up there that's greater than anything in the world that likes me. I mean, God willing, I'll be doing 15 conventions this year. I got about 5 or 6 more to go. And let me tell you, I just fresh out of San Diego, I had a room packed where people were turned away, they couldn't get in. So I got so many things to say. In fact, they are working on a documentary movie on me right now, which they finished in San Diego. They came all the way to Florida from Washington City, Seattle. They followed me to Denver. They did a lot of shooting then and finished up in San Diego. So it'll take about a year. They're calling it Golden Age, the Alan Bellman story. Oh, I tell a few things that I can't tell you now. So, yeah. I tell you, I never asked for anything. I never asked. I never said, I want to go here, I want to go there. I had conventions I have to refuse because, what can I tell you, it's just so much. But I'm keeping up with Stan. I mean, he's really going to town, and God bless him, you know. I mean, this keeps us going. People like you keep us going.
What, you worked for Timely through the 50s.
Yeah.
How far did you go into the 60s at that point? Or?
Some.
Did you retire, or what did you do?
I went into a business for myself. So I just met my second wife. This guy, what's his name again? The psychiatrist?
Wortham.
Dr. Wortham, Frederick Wortham. He killed the industry. Stanley was packing up ready to go home and be a salesman. And I had no job. So I went into business and for a few years and went back, got a job, moved to Florida, got a job in the art department at the Sun Sentinel. And what else can I say? And then I was brought back to comics by a Dr. Michael Vassallo, a dentist in New York. You know Michael?
I know Michael. He just finished another book on the history of Timely and Marvel. I forget his co-author, but Dr. Michael
Blake.
Right.
Blake.
If you guys want to check out the true history of comic books, I recommend a couple books to you. One is called Men of Tomorrow, Gangsters, Geeks, and the Men Who Created the Comic Book. And it's the true history of how the comic book came to be. And the reality of it is, it was kind of spawned out of the porn business of the time, because the porn business of that, it's not like the internet today. It was primarily published material where you'd see a girl strapped to a torture rack and her top is torn, but nothing revealing. That was considered heavy stuff. And the comic books were basically created because they wanted to sell something to Junior while Dad bought that. Well, pretty soon comic books overtook it. But so when he brought you back and you started appearing at these shows and interacting in the public, were you surprised at people's remembrance of that time?
Yeah, they do. I mean, I get a call from Michael. He says, "Are you the Alan Bellman that worked for Timely Marvel?" I said, "Yeah," and he told me who he was. He's a dentist.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, we became good friends. I mean, you know that big fat book that this German company put out, Marvel Comics, 75 years of Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in there
years
because of
Marvel
Michael.
Yeah.
In fact, the book is so heavy, it's on his shelf, I can't even lift it up.
It's a big book. It's a big coffee table book.
Yeah, but I mean big, and you know, they bring it to me, some guy's carrying it to sign it. But I tell you, it was a good life, a wonderful life. I'm really grateful. I've had few miracles in my life, and but I'm going to open up for questions because
What about Bill Everett and Carl Burgos? Did you ever know them?
Carl Burgos sat behind me, and I met Carl Burgos' daughters, who wrote to me that they're going to San Diego to receive an award for Carl Burgos. They said they looked forward to meeting with me. His two daughters came. I was invited to the Will Eisner Award dinner, and I met up with them again, and that was a wonderful, wonderful surprise. As far as Bill Everett's concerned, I never met Bill Everett. He was we went to the high school industrial art. He was a guy that was drawing for comic books. Hey, he's one of our students in the school. But never, he created Submariner. But I never had the privilege of meeting, because what he did was on freelance basis. And, well, that was just it, you know, I mean, but I hope that answers your question.
Do you have any memories of Carl Burgos? What was he like?
Okay, there's nothing much I can say about Carl. He sat behind me and never said a word. It's true, really. I cannot even remember having maybe a hello, goodbye, but he worked diligently. Now, Carl Burgos was a young kid when he created it. All our work was crude. He had an idea. He had an idea.